make a move and the bunny gets it.
I said, put the bunny back in the box. Why couldn't you put the bunny back in the box?
It's showtime.
Roar. Roar.
Colonel Ironsides here. 200 years I stood in the gap, fighting those who would harm my country. It was my honor, my sacred duty, so help me God. 9 times they took my life. 9 times I stood back up and made them pay. The freedom fighter and I could handle anything, but someone betrayed me. I was ambushed, made mortal, rendered powerless, and retired. They passed an amendment that made me a civilian before I left the hospital. For 50 years, I've watched my country change. Watched its work while erasing me from history. The day I quit my job, I powered up and discovered they lied about that too. I'll remind them of freedom. I'll remind them of duty. I'll remind them of their oaths and who they serve. I'll remind them while I'm shoving it down their throats.
Psychically, I'm very well endowed.
I want to know what you're thinking. There are some things you can't hide. I want to know what you're feeling. Tell me what's on your mind.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome to the show on a lovely rain-soaked Monday. This is Halloween week, and there's I guess I'm going to like cover some of my favorite, rather macabre, particular stories and stuff like that this week. And today, one of my favorite all-time favorite movies, one of my favorite movies all time. Golly, I'm repeating words today. I wrote when I was trying to like convince people to come see the show. The blurb that I wrote had tragically twice within 2 sentences, which is like really bad writing. I was like, where's the edit button? Where's the freaking edit button? That you can't edit on a repost, unfortunately. I just had to deal with it. I had to live with it. Anyway, so this week I'm going to talk about The Crow, the 1994 movie in particular. Now, it's based on a graphic novel by James O'Barr. It's one of the biggest, uh, it's one of the biggest success stories in indie comics, and so, of course, it's going to be in my Balawhack. It's going to fit inside of my speciality, I guess you'd say. And so today we're going to talk about it. Now this comic, let me see, when was it published? It was published 1989. Was the first time it was published by James O'Barr. This is the artist writer's name. Hold on a second. It's been a minute since I watched The Crow, but I loved it when it first came out. Yeah. Also, killer soundtrack. Well, it actually set the rules for a lot of the movies that followed, and a lot of the things that it innovated were by necessity. To finish the movie, they had to do some things that had never been done before, and it's actually become a kind of standard practice. Some of the cuts that they made in the scenes, some of the transitions they made, some of the ways that they hid character, the main character, which I'll give the reasoning later if you don't know. But they did a lot of like innovative things on that movie. One of the things that they did was they used a soundtrack that it wasn't like they didn't like use the music as like a window dressing for the story. They used the music to move the story along and be an integral part, which was very few movies had done that before then. But this is the movie that really pushed that forward, and suddenly you had you not only had like songs that were like included in the background of scenes or sing-alongs or whatever, but you actually had these songs that were the background for some of these scenes. Like somebody there was like a band on the stage at the club where this really pivotal scene happens, and they just had the band play in the background of the whole entire scene, and it was just like low. It just added to like the energy of the scene. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. There's two documentaries, two pretty short documentaries that I'm going to use today. One is by Mattt, 4Ts, who is one of the best documentarians out there. He is really, really incredible. Anytime you see one of his videos come out, you're just click, click. There's a few people like that. But the other one is by the Critical Drinker. Critical Drinker, for all of his eccentricities and supposed alcohol problem, he is a really well thought out cinemaphile, and so I'm using his his like short clip on The Crow, but I had to cut it up so it will, I could upload it to StreamYards. But if you want to watch the whole thing uncut, it's in the description below. Now, most of the time, videos by other people who are creating content for YouTube doesn't get struck unless they're connected to a mainstream outlet or something like that. So I've never heard of anybody getting struck using critical drinker stuff, but we'll find out if I'm going to be the first one. But anyway, so here's part one. This is like the let me kind of set the stage. James O'Barr, his fiance passes because of a drunk driver, and he was supposed to see her that night, and so he had survivor's guilt, like a really vicious case of survivor's guilt that just like ate his world. And to kind of like get it out of his head, he imagined this avenging individual, with survivor's guilt over the death of his fiance, coming back from the dead to visit vengeance upon the people who took her from him. And it was a way to work through his anger at the driver and the fact that he didn't feel like he had faced any, consequences that were commiserate with his act. Having lost my parents to a drunk driver, I can kind of identify with that. And brother and sister, practically. But he worked through this, but he did it in a very violent and vicious way that was really raw, and nobody had seen anything like that. And it was like somebody had cut themselves open and bled all over the page. And it was very intense, very visceral, and it changed comics. And he went on to write several iterations of it. But in around 1991 or 2, Hollywood came calling and bought the rights. It allowed him finally to, to make creating comics his life instead of working a 9-to-5 and having it as a side hustle. And but the thing about it is, though, it became one of the greatest things that ever happened to him and one of the worst things that ever happened to him at the same time. I'll cover that later. But here's Critical Drinker. He can sum it up better than I can. But this is talking about the movie.
If you ask most people to name the film that kicked off the modern era of darker, grittier, and more violent comic book movies, most of them would probably point to 2005's Sin City, or V for Vendetta, or 1998's Blade. All good movies in their own right, but there's another film from way back in 1994 that really paved the way for pretty much everything that would eventually follow it. A movie marred by tragedy and controversy during production that almost didn't see the light of day at all, but would ultimately go on to become a sleeper hit and amass a cult following over the past 30 years. I'm talking, of course, about the 1994 dark superhero thriller, The Crow. I first saw The Crow when I was like 12 years old, and I went into it expecting a typical Hollywood superhero film with lots of action and explosions, and well, that's not what this film is about at all. I came away from it feeling confused and vaguely unhappy, and it was probably a good couple of decades before I saw it again. But holy shit, what a difference 20 years can make. When I rewatched it again for this review, I was absolutely gripped by pretty much every aspect of this film, from the tragic story of love and revenge from beyond the grave, to the gorgeous cinematography and direction, to the captivating performances and haunting musical score. It really seems like a film that perfectly captures the look and feel of the source material, doing absolutely everything that it sets out to do, and weirdly, it barely seems to have aged. If you told me this film had been made a couple of years ago, then I absolutely would believe you. The Crow begins in the fair city of Detroit on the night before Halloween, better known as Devil's Night, and the arrival of the police at the scene of a violent double homicide. Musician Eric Draven, get it? Eric D. Raven, and his fiancée Shelley were attacked, tortured, and murdered by a local criminal gang who fled the scene, leaving 2 more innocent lives destroyed in their wake. Just another senseless murder in an entire city filled with them. Flash forward to the following year, and Eric suddenly comes back to life and rises from his grave, compelled by the supernatural power of a mysterious crow. Returning to his ruined apartment, he discovers that he's effectively immortal now, and any wounds he takes will heal up pretty much instantly. He also begins to remember the trauma of his own death, and promptly decides that a bit of good old-fashioned payback is in order. So the film basically follows Eric's violent quest for revenge against the gang who killed him and his fiancée, using a variety of extremely brutal methods on each victim. Along the way, he also tries to reconnect with Sarah, a young street urchin who once knew him and recognises him in his reanimated form. But the more men he kills, the more he attracts the attention of Top Dollar, the criminal kingpin who rules the city with an iron fist, and who just might know a way to send Eric back to his grave permanently.
Well, one thing that he pointed out is that the protagonist in The Crow is actually like a serial killer. He's like it's just like a slasher flick, except that Jason or Freddy or Michael Myers is the person you're supposed to be rooting for, and that really had not happened before. If I've really looked to try to determine if that had ever happened before The Crow. It's happened a lot of times since, and any, part of the deconstruction of the hero, which unfortunately The Crow, I guess, was one of the first ones that did it. But the Punisher pretty much did it before The Crow, but the Crow stalking in each individual one and murdering them in a way that was appropriate to what they brought to the table. Like 1010 was all about knives. Victims, aren't we all? Yeah. Hey, what's up, Wookie? Yeah, victims, aren't we all? That's one of my favorite all times. It's one of my favorite all times. It's funny I just mentioned 1010 because that's what he said before he, according to T-Bird, stuck knives in all of 1010's major organs in alphabetical order. Great line, great line. The great gosh, what is his last name? Is Kelly. David Kelly, I think. I can't remember. Something Kelly. 1 second. He was in Warriors. He's been in a lot of movies since. Let me make sure I want to get his name right because he is one of my favorite actors. Hold on. That 1994 film. One second. David Patrick Kelly. David Kelly, yeah, but it's David Patrick Kelly. I knew it was pretty much David Kelly. Also, one of my other favorite movies and from the 80s called Dreamscape. Anyway, he's the bad guy in that one. But T-Bird, one of my favorite. T-Bird, every sentence, everything that he said, he just chewed scenery. It's just a brilliant portrayal. But anyway, so it's pretty unique in a lot of ways. Let me finish up with this. Let me finish with the second half right quick. He said something pretty important in the second half of this. So let me finish it off with the drinker. Here we go.
I said at the start of this video that younger, dumber me didn't get much out of The Crow first time around, and a lot of it was probably down to having entirely the wrong expectations. The Crow definitely isn't your typical superhero film, and holy shit, it's almost a physical shock when you compare it to the trite, forgettable fluff of the MCU these days. It's a dark, violent, moody, and introspective kind of story, laced with themes of tragic, doomed love, revenge, regret, and grief. I mean, that's not to say there aren't any action scenes in this film. There's some absolutely brutal fistfights, and Brandon Lee's martial arts skills are definitely on display here, not to mention a couple of excellent gun battles near the finale, but action and spectacle is very much secondary to character development and storytelling here. The world of The Crow is a bleak, gloomy series of dingy alleyways, boarded up buildings and seedy nightclubs where there's almost no people brave enough to walk the streets, and it's almost always raining. It's a strong aesthetic to be sure, and the whole production is practically dripping with mid-90s emo moodiness. Eric even takes the time to rock out on a rooftop before trashing his guitar in a rage. You can either fight it or embrace it, but one thing's for sure, The Crow's not gonna compromise for you. Performances are pretty much excellent throughout. Michael Wincott brings his usual raspy-voiced villain routine to top dollar, and he delivers some fucking excellent monologues. Tony Todd is always entertaining to watch, and he's great here as Top Dollar's right-hand man. I mean, if you've got the fucking Candyman as your second in command, you know that you've made it in life. Bai Ling proves that she must be some kind of immortal vampire because she doesn't seem to have aged in like 30 years. But full credit has got to go to Brandon Lee, who invests Eric with the perfect combination of lustful vengeance and tragic innocence. He's a tortured soul who finds only fleeting relief in his acts of violent revenge, a shadow of the man he once was, mourning the life he lost and desperate to be at peace again. The release of The Crow was both overshadowed and in some ways kind of enhanced by Lee's tragic death due to a misfiring gun on set. It became one of those unfortunate movies defined by events taking place around it, and it's kind of a shame because The Crow is a fantastic, well-made and deeply personal film in its own rights. And apart from a few slightly dodgy special effects shots, there's really nothing I can think to criticise it for. And if you're looking for something a bit different to see out Halloween night, then well, you could do a lot worse than this. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now.
Now, you know, he was talking about Brandon Lee's passing. The Brandon Lee was on an upward trajectory. He's the son of Bruce Lee, and he was like definitely on the upswing. He had done Showdown and Little Tokyo with Dolph Lundgren. Then he did a movie called Rapid Fire, and which was really good. I mean, he was definitely on his way up, and The Crow was no different. It was a performance that would have made him. It just reminds me a lot of Heath Ledger, you know, Heath Ledger's Joker, in that people saw his best performance after his passing. And so there's a kind of a bittersweetness to it. You know, you got to see the potential that we lost, you know, after we lost them. And Brandon Lee is no different. But the whole entire production is a really interesting story. And Mattt Fortes, I don't know, Mattt, I guess. I don't know. I don't know how he pronounces it. Mattt Quati, I guess. But he's really brilliant documentarian, and he talked about when in his video about The Crow, he talked about James O'Barr and his reaction to what happened on the set of The Crow. And Michael Massey, the guy who played Fun Boy, he actually fired the prop gun that killed Brandon Lee. He died just a few years ago. And it was kind of an aside in his obituary, but somebody talked about that he had never gotten over, firing that gun that killed Brandon. And it haunted him the rest of his life. I mean, can you imagine? Because it wasn't his fault. He was handed a gun that was improperly packed by a man that never should have been there. And the whole production was being lied to about contractors that were being used for things like armor. And it's a very similar thing happened on the show, on the set of Rust, the infamous Alec Baldwin shooting that woman to death. It's very similar to that, in that both times, and actually both of those incidences are the only two times it's ever happened in American history where prop guns were improperly packed or improperly discharged and managed wound up killing someone. And so they're kind of bookends in a way. But it really affected James O'Barr, who's The Crow just felt like a curse to him. Even though it put him on the map, and even though it kind of helped him work through his feelings, bad things seem to follow The Crow. And so when Brandon fell to the incidents or the problem or the thing that happened, which is kind of like, the Lee family kind of has their own curse rumor because of what happened to Bruce and what's happened to other relatives and things like that. But James O'Barr was just pretty much believed that The Crow had a curse on it. And that anything that he touched was going to hurt somebody. And it caused him a lot of pain. I can't say it any better than Matt can. So let me play this videos. Here we go.
Now, the big challenge for the Crow movie was finding its star, someone who could sell both the tenderness and cruelty of Eric Draven. A lot of big names were tossed around, but the producers eventually found someone who might fit: Brandon Lee. They gave O'Barr a copy of Lee's previous movie, and while he enjoyed Lee in it, he just seemed too nice to pull off what was needed for The Crow. But he agreed to meet with him. Lee turned out to be as nice off-screen as he was on-screen, but he was also a huge fan of The Crow. He could quote lines from it, and he truly understood what made it special. Lee and O'Barr became fast friends, and O'Barr knew that Lee would fight to make a version of The Crow that was authentic to the comic. He signed off. They had their star. Miraculously, The Crow had made it into production less than 2 years after being optioned, with a team of people around it who wanted to honor the creator's original vision.
I think that the film is quite faithful to the comic book. I hope that it is, in terms of preserving that hard edge.
The soundtrack would even reflect O'Barr's own taste in music. After 28 days of filming, the movie was almost complete. Lee was in good spirits, probably because he knew this movie was finally about to make him a star, and because he was engaged to be married just a few days after production wrapped. But when it came time to shoot the climactic scene, the scene where Eric Draven is killed, there was a tragic mistake with the prop gun.
Tragedy, it seems, runs in the family. Bruce Lee was a movie star who died young and became a legend. Now his son Brandon is gone as well, fatally wounded while starring in a movie.
The film would still be completed, with Lee's stunt double taking his place in the remaining few shots. The studio would release the film, but it was a film haunted by Lee's death. What should have been his breakthrough role was instead a final tribute to a life cut tragically short. Despite, or perhaps because of this tragedy, the movie was a huge hit, and its impact even bigger. Both the film itself and the soundtrack that O'Barr had helped compile ushered in a new wave of pop culture, helping bring goth to the mainstream. But for O'Barr, all the success didn't matter. His comic had once helped him crawl out of the pit of despair over Bethany's death, but now, suddenly, his friend was dead, and he fell back in. He blamed himself for Lee's death.
Now, Brandon Lee was going to get married just as soon as things wrapped, and so that was definitely one of the more tragic things about the whole thing. that and his career being on an upward trajectory, this movie was going to make him a star. There's no doubt about it. Anybody that saw the dailies would said that. But that was very interesting the way that they saved the movie. They used some rotoscoping, but they also used some digital Mattt technology to place his face on another actor. There's and it's really hard to see where they did these things because they did it so well. But they managed to. There was a lot of scenes that Eric Draven was going to be in that they wound up having to cut out. That didn't no longer fit because they couldn't do close in shots with Brandon and things like that. So, but what happened, what came out of it was a tighter, more taut movie that has no fat on it. It moves so purposely through the whole entire runtime, and Alex Proyas, who is actually before he directed this, was a MTV video producer. He's the director of MTV videos, and because of that, the movie that the music that James O'Barr picked out was a lot of his favorite underground, more along the lines of trap and hip hop and dance, electronica, and things like that. Things that were underground. And because of his ability to do like videos for MTV, Alex actually was able to weave that music in with the actual movie, and because he's into like visuals, he desaturated everything. When he shot it in like low light and like the whole entire movie, and then soaked everything in rain, and that became kind of its own genre style. Later on, he really perfected this in Dark City. If you've never seen Dark City, I would highly recommend it. It's an incredible movie. But the emotional fallout for the cast. They actually took a couple weeks off, even though they had a tight turnaround shoot. And then they came back together in the studio of Wilmington, North Carolina. And they figured out what during that course of that 2 weeks, Alex Proyas and Eric, I can't remember his last name, but he is a really good writer. He's written several other things, but they well, let me look it up right quick. It should be right there. Hold on. Well, it's you know the name if I told you. Okay. Well, Goya. I think it's David Goya. But because of the tragedy and because of the necessity of putting a movie in the can, because they did not want Brandon start making turn to never see the light of day. And so all of them were very determined to finish this movie, get it in the can, get it into theaters so people could see, for themselves at just what a star Brandon was going to be and was already. And I mean, it's kind of similar to when Bruce Lee died. They finished the Game of Death, but they didn't do a very good job. I mean, they used like cardboard cutouts and things like that, and an actor that did not look anything like Bruce Lee to do some of his dialogue and things like that. But they just wanted to like keep the like floor by floor fight scene that he did that was pretty much very, very influential thereafter. But they didn't do as good a job as the Crow 1994 movie guys did. Hola, what's up, Wrangler? Good to see you, man. But and I guess some people would think that it was a little ghoulish, but they did ask Brandon's fiance, and they did ask Brandon Lee's mother, the widow of Bruce Lee. They did ask her and his fiance if they wanted them to finish it, and both of them just absolutely said, please, 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 if it's at all possible, finish this. Brandon loved this movie. You know, he gave his heart, life, and soul for it, and died for it. Make sure this movie sees the light of day. But James O'Barr had a really difficult time with it. Let me play the second part of this.
He wished he had never even written the comic. He re-entered his spiral of drinking, fighting, and drug use. Even as his comic became a sensation, as it was translated into a dozen languages, as it became the best-selling independent graphic novel of all time, O'Barr produced almost no new work. He would watch the movie over and over, torturing himself with the memory of his dead friend. Eventually, he traveled from Detroit to Seattle to visit Lee's grave. On Lee's grave, his fiancée had inscribed a passage from Paul Bowles' book, The Sheltering Sky, a passage that was originally intended for their wedding invitations.
Because we do not know when we will die, we get to think of life as an inexhaustible well. And yet everything happens only a certain number of times, and a very small number, really. How many more times will you remember a certain afternoon of your childhood? An afternoon that is so deeply a part of your being that you can't even conceive of your life without it. Perhaps 4 or 5 times more, perhaps not even that. How many more times will you watch the full moon rise? Perhaps 20, and yet it all seems limitless.
And it was here, at Lee's gravesite, sitting beside these words, that O'Barr finally gained closure, that he forgave himself for both Bethany and Brandon's deaths, that he finally began to value his own life. By the year 2000, he got sober, and he's since gotten married and had kids. The Crow endures because O'Barr opened himself up and bled onto the page, exposed to the world the ugly, raw emotions that we're expected to keep hidden. And just like Joy Division came for O'Barr, The Crow still comes to those that need it. It comes to say that what you're feeling is okay, that it's okay to hurt, that it's okay to be angry, that you are not alone. But it's O'Barr's life, not his comic, that sends us the final message. You will get through this. You will move on. And you will be okay. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, you can really help out by liking and commenting down below. And be sure to subscribe for more comic videos soon.
Well, I mean, when I saw the Crow, I saw it in the theaters with my stepbro. You know, we didn't always have the best relationship, but in this particular instance, you know, we very rarely did anything together. He kind of bullied me growing up, so I didn't exactly have a lot of warm snuggies for him. But we went and saw this together, and I remember every single angle, every frame of that movie, you can stop it and get a poster. There's so many iconic images that came out of this movie, and it was just so perfectly shot. Hold on a second. That movie was a great one, yeah. Well, now I guess I need to address the elephant in the room. And that is the many sequels that have happened since, including the first one, which was City of Angels, which was like 2 years later, also by Alex Proyas. And it's very moody. It's very atmospheric. He used a different filter. He used a kind of yellowish filter on that one. And but because he kind of had free reign because of the success of The Crow, he was able to indulge himself. And there's a lot of things in that movie that could have been cut out. That probably should have been cut out. That weren't. And because he wasn't restrained by the amount of shots that he could put in, then he was able to just like go crazy. And it didn't help that the script was almost shot for shot The Crow, the original the Crow. So if you didn't ever watch the original Crow and you watched that movie, you would think it was a little too long, a little bloated. The the character work wasn't as sharp as it was in the first one. And it just it's an inferior movie in every conceivable way. And then there was like Salvation, there was like Something Cry. Then there was a recent one that just came out, like 2024. I haven't seen it, but everybody that has seen it said that it just didn't have the heart, it didn't have the soul, didn't have the message, and it was just like somebody making fan fiction of The Crow rather than somebody, showing their own vision of it. And Shelley was kind of like the main protagonist in it. I guess the modern audience disease hit it pretty hard. But yeah, Eric Draven was like a secondary character in his own movie. So it is what it is. But was a short-lived TV show called it's called The Crow Stairway to Heaven. It starred Mark Dacascos, and I did see several episodes of it. It was kind of like a fugitive slash, Incredible Hulk, kind of like movie, but I mean, or style, where he was roaming around looking for Shelley and a way for him to get to heaven. And along the way, he would solve, like he would, avenge people's crimes. But they had this weird thing where he was like looked like an ordinary human, but then he would turn into the Crow, kind of like a transformation. So it was very much like the Incredible Hulk in that way. And Mark Dacascos is an incredible martial artist, but I've never found him very compelling as a screen presence. But it didn't last. But it didn't last 1 year, 1 season. But Crow purists will say that it's like the second best thing after the first Crow movie and the comic book. So if you get a chance to find it, I think all the there's like several episodes that were never broadcast that are on the DVD. I think there's a DVD set, but it's worth a look. But the rest of these movies, I mean, they had the kid from T2 in one of them. They had like this other actor that they tried to make a thing for a little while. And I think that was Crow Salvation. Can't remember his name. Obviously, he didn't make it. But basically, The Crow 1994 and the comic, and some people say the TV show are the best versions of The Crow. The movies, after just not recommended by me or anybody, and I've seen multiple ones. I've seen the at least 3 of them, and it's not good. Not good. They keep trying to they try to keep redoing the formula that made the first Crow movie so good, but they can't because the death of Brandon and the restraints that put on Alex Proyas, and forcing Alex Proyas to go inside of himself and find the auteur, and kind of like work around, because there are things that he did finishing that movie, like distant shots that he would have done a close up, but he left it distant and just had like the paint lit up so you couldn't see that it wasn't Brandon, but you could see the paint. And so it's very much like the Michael Myers coming out of the, seeing a glimpse of his white mask before somebody gets murdered. But it had, there was a lot of shots that he would have indulged himself, and a lot of editing that he was forced to do that he wouldn't have done normally, that just make that movie special in a way that's just not replicable. And there's something to be said for overcoming obstacles in work and in your art, whatever art is you're doing, whether it's writing, whether it's drawing or painting or making a movie, making a video. There's something about putting an obstacle, forcing somebody to work with restraints. That's why some of these indie movies you see are so brilliant, because they didn't have the budget. Because they didn't have the budget, they absolutely had to make everything tighter, make everything more character driven, because they don't have special effects. And there's example after example. The first Halloween was an independent movie, essentially. And because he didn't have a lot of film, and he didn't have a lot of time for shooting schedule, he had to imply a lot of Michael Myers. He had to show glimpses of Michael Myers in scenes that he wasn't even officially in, and just created a whole entire genre, essentially, because he's working through these restraints that he had. And so in a lot of ways, The Crow 1994, I pray that he'll never get a director's cut. I don't think it's possible for him to have a director's cut. There's just not enough. There's a whole entire character that they cut out. Michael Berryman from The Hills Have Eyes fame actually did a character that they had to cut because they didn't have Brandon to interact with it. And the character's not needed. It's just not needed. But that character would have been in there, and probably gumming up the movie. The movie you got is so unique and such a one-off. And these people were desperate to put this movie in the can. they could not let their friend Brandon Lee like be a which basically they had to have this performance. They had to make sure people saw this performance. And they were going to move hell and earth to make sure that people saw this performance. And that determination caused them to do things that they wouldn't have done normally, go further than they would have done, push technology that in ways that technology had never been utilized before, but now is common. I mean, this is 94, and they did digital mapping in 1994. And that wasn't standard practice. That wasn't even available till much later. But they invented it to try to put this movie in the can. And they were so absolutely devastated and determined. And they put their grief on hold. And all the actors came back, reshot scenes, used the stunt double, who, by the way, is now the director of John Wick movies. The stunt double that they used to double scenes with Brandon Lee now is the director of the John Wick movies. And he was also Keanu Reeves' stunt double for The Matrix. What is his name? I think it's Stokowski. Chad Stokowski. But he did a body double for Brandon Lee. And now he's a very famous director. So it's just a tragedy. I mean, there's no way around it. And because it's a tragedy, anytime you watch this movie, it's like you're laying flowers on the grave of a friend. This would have made Brandon Lee as big as his father ever was. This movie changed culture, changed the way movies were shot, changed the way soundtracks were used, changed a lot of things. There's before this movie and after this movie. A lot of what you saw later. David Goya, who directed Blade 1, actually helped rewrite the script of The Crow. Stokowski, body double they used to create scenes that Brandon wasn't able to be in, is now director of the John Wick movies. I mean, talk about taking lemons and making lemonade. This is a unique movie. It's a one-off movie. And born out of the ashes of a horrific thing. But they made something. They made something special. They made something. Then that scene at the end where the little girl does the voiceover and says that true love never dies. And then they dedicate it to Brandon and his fiance. I mean, that's beautiful. I mean, it really is beautiful. But anyway, so this is a Bunny recommend if you've never seen the 1994 Crow movie. And I seriously doubt there's a lot of you that hasn't seen it. But if you've never seen it, do yourself a favor. If you want a Halloween movie, It's got atmosphere. It's got creepy crawlies. It's got supernatural in it. Except you are basically rooting for the ghost. And incredible. All the villains are awesome. Brandon is awesome. Ernie Hudson is great in it. And, Ernie Hudson. That Ernie Hudson is in this movie. Yeah. Just check it out. Honestly, check it out. But this has been Cooper for Telepathic Bunny Comics. Thank you all for coming. Follow the White Rabbit. And we'll see you all next time. Have a nice night. Bye, everybody.